One of the observations I had was the longer that these participants, these refugees, are in that country, the type of ideas they come up with to work on change significantly.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Aiken, and I manage career services for the Department of Management Science and Engineering at Stanford University. Welcome to MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles. Figuring out how to educate and support entrepreneurs is critical to so many things, from economic growth for the benefit of society as a whole, to a personal sense of success and satisfaction for the entrepreneurs themselves. Adapting and applying this education for the benefit of refugees who have been uprooted from the communities and countries they've known their entire lives takes it to a whole other level. Graduating PhD student Zahra Hejrati has focused her research work on how mentorship can have maximum impact on refugee entrepreneurs, and now hopes that her results can be part of a change in the narrative around refugees, making it clear that they're contributing members of society who, with aid and support, can add even more value. And so I'm really excited to learn more about her work and findings. Zahra, thank you for being here today. Before we get to all of that, can you briefly talk us through how it was you came to be here and working on your research?
First, thank you so much for the opportunity to share about my background. I did my undergrad in physics in Sharif University and realized I love studying physics, but not really working in that because it didn't have the human aspects that I really love with social sciences. So in my third year of undergrad, I did a minor in econ. And then at the end of my first year, I also started working at an edtech startup. I really loved the experience of building something, and the fact that it was for educational product, that was a plus. It was a very meaningful experience for me because we got a lot of emails and a lot of positive reaction from students in remote places, rural areas, even outside Iran, who loved the products because it actually gave them the access that otherwise they didn't have. And then in 2014, I took a trip here to the US to visit my brother. And as part of that, I visited the Stanford campus and was talking with the people here. And then when I went back to Iran, I kept working on the startup. I finished my undergrad, and then I applied for an MS program here. And then I moved here in September 2016.
So were you thinking about a PhD at all at that point? Or were you kind of master's program and that was going to be it?
So when I was applying, I was joking with everyone, with all my friends, and saying no way I'm going to do a PhD. I'm just going to go there, do a master's, and then either join a startup or start my own business. And when I came, I took Bob Sutton's organization behavior class, 280, and he always cited research. This research shows how psychological safety affects the organization, or how we can do brainstorming or creativity. And that buzzword of okay, research are actually doing something that's applicable in real world. That was something that really was interesting for me. And then I talked with Bob about my background. I love startups. And he connected me to Chuck, my advisor, Chuck Easley, and says okay, if you want to do research, you should talk to Chuck. He's the entrepreneurship person. He's a startup person. I talked with Chuck. We connected. I started doing research with him. And then I applied for a PhD, and I started my PhD program with him as my advisor.
So you've applied and you've got in, and there's a lot of different places that you could take that area of the research. So how did you narrow it down to what your research was going to look at?
It was 2018. So there was a lot of AI talk, but not as mainstream as it is now. I was surrounded by a lot of computer science people. My brother, my then boyfriend, now husband. So they all talk about the future is AI. The future is using machine learning. I was thinking that, okay, this AI or machine learning thing is probably the technology that's going to change everything. Organization, a startup, everything. I wanted to study that. When I started my PhD, I got very good advice from one of the older PhD from the group, Jiang. I was talking with her about, I really want to do something in that area, And her advice was, okay, this is good that you're thinking about that. Like, what is a good topic or what's going to be like very interesting in a couple of years? But the PhD journey is long term. It's like 5-6 years. And if you just work on something just because it's going to be important or it's going to be useful and you really don't like it as much or you're not passionate about, it's going to be a hard journey. So that kind of stick with me when I evaluate projects that I want to work on. Is this something that I see myself passionate about? I was a PhD with Stanford Technology Ventures program, and through that program, there was this opportunity with the Turkish university approaching a CVP. They wanted to do something for Syrian refugees. They had some funding, they want to do something. Chuck asked, are you interested in this? And for me, because I grew up in a country that we had a lot of refugee population, and I know them, and I know how hardworking they can be, and know how painful their journey is. They had to leave their countries, their loved ones, their belongings, and just like go somewhere else to find the basic livings. That was kind of like, yes, I like this project. This is something I can be passionate about. I was kind of like, okay, let's see if I can marry the idea of technology, machine learning, AI with this refugee project and build something out of this. And with my background in education, I started thinking of designing a program that would bring all of these together, like education, technology, and then serving refugee population. And very unfortunately, it was very timely because there was a lot of things going on.
So as you said, there was this growing international refugee crisis. So it's an urgent problem. It's important to get it right. It's also a really massive and complicated problem. So how on earth do you get started on something like that?
It's a very good question. Starting with a rough idea of how we want to think about this. There was a paper out there back then that talked about when refugees move to a new country, how we can match them with locations that they can find jobs or just their chance of wage employment is higher. But most of the time, based on my experiences, first of all, there are not a lot of jobs out there for them. And second, they can be very good at entrepreneurship and starting their own businesses. So the idea that Chuck and I had was, okay, let's think about matching refugees, but do that for entrepreneurship. Let's match them with the places or just match them with people who can help them become better entrepreneurs. After talking and just brainstorming on the idea of what we can do, we get some funding from the King Center to start a project. And that partnership that we had with the Turkish university ended up not working because of a lot of reasons, including COVID. But we loved the idea. So we kept that and tried to find a new context for that. And then Chuck was working with a visiting scholar from Sweden, Methani, who was originally from Ethiopia. And Ethiopia back then was one of the largest population of refugees in Africa. And they had very great policies regarding letting refugees work. So it was a perfect setting. And for the first pilot, it was pure observational. We just wanted to get things going. But in fall 2020, the civil war started in Ethiopia. And unfortunately, the people that we work with, which was Eritrean refugees there, suddenly were no longer welcome in Ethiopia. So as a result of that, our target population moved to other countries, and our program became a refugee itself. A big group of them moved to Uganda. So we moved with them. We got funding for the full experiment there.
And so what have the findings been?
The first pilot was purely observational. We wanted to see, okay, what are the interesting things that we can find there? And one of the observations I had was the longer that these participants, these refugees, are in that country, the type of ideas they come up with to work on change significantly. For example, in the first couple of years when they are in the new country, every idea that they have is somehow connected to their hometown. It's kind of like, okay, I want to start a cafe, internet cafe, so that people talk with their loved ones. Or I want to start a cafe that serve this snack because we don't have it here. But when I take a look at the ideas that refugees who've been there for like 5, 6, 7 years, those ideas are like serving broader market. For example, one of them was, okay, every time that we want to go to a doctor, we have to go there at 6 a.m. writing our name down on a piece of paper and wait there. It's not just for refugees. Everyone who want to go to the doctor should go through that process. I want to start a business that can automate this booking appointment for doctors. So this might be like very simple for Silicon Valley, but for Uganda, that was huge. That was very innovative. The thing seems to be, okay, they need to be very integrated in the host community to be able to come up with those ideas. So how we can bridge that gap, how we can help those who are there just for 1-2 years to be able to get to those nice ideas. And we thought, okay, maybe mentorship can help. So we designed an experiment, which was matching half of our participants with locally integrated mentors and matching half of them with refugee mentors to see how their ideas change after talking with their mentors and receiving mentorship.
I feel like my assumption and hypothesis there would be that there'd be a difference in potentially a lot of things, given the differences in things like local systems knowledge and lived experiences and the camaraderie that you could get with people who've been through similar experiences. What did you find as the differences between these locally raised mentors and the refugee mentors?
Our expectation was those who are working with local mentors will end up seeing higher improvement in their ideas. But surprisingly, what we found was refugee mentors were more helpful in the metrics that we were measuring. And it was very puzzling for us. And then with the interviews, what we realized was refugee mentors were actually more encouraging because they've been a refugee themselves. They kind of see the potential in the participants and they will push them to be more risky, just go for new ideas, just be an entrepreneur. They know that this person has high capability and that, okay, so if this person survived like leaving the country and coming here and do all this, they can start a business in that area that they might not be as familiar. But the locally integrated mentors, they had some stigma, some biases against these like refugee entrepreneurs or participants that was keeping them from giving very bold advice. So their advice were kind of like, okay, stick to what you know. Don't try something new. Just go for like the smaller markets. On the other hand, I know that locally integrated mentors are still valuable because they can give legitimacy. They can still connect you with the right people. They can give you advice on what regulation to look for. So it's not that one of them are better than the other. Both of them are good. They're complementary in different stages of entrepreneurship and different aspects of entrepreneurship. It needs to be harmonious in a way that like at which stage you get advice from which one of them. At the same time, it's very important when you're designing mentorship program to give training against biases to the mentors, especially like local mentors, to make sure that they are giving the best advice.
So within this broad topic, I know that this amazing project that you just described is just one part of the work that you've done. So what are some other things that you did?
One of them is a qualitative piece on how people rebuild their network when they're like in a new country. So that was a very big question because social network is something these people really miss. And just understanding what are the practices that they're using in recreating that network. I was also working with the World Bank on another project that was working with refugees in the Middle East that was also in education to promote entrepreneurship among female and refugee population there. The last thing I worked in my PhD, we piloted a project on how AI mentoring tool can help refugees see how these AI mentors compare to human mentors, how participants interact with them. For part of that, we wanted to analyze for biases, but also just exploring this topic, see how AI can fit into the entrepreneurship journey. I've passed the baton to other PhD students within our group, and I'm now taking the advisory role there. Overall, I think what I'm hoping these research provide is make sure that they have some implication for policy, convincing governments to design better programs for refugees.
I'm finding so interesting as you talking about the value of having these different types of human mentors, the refugees and then the locally embedded, and then potentially adding in AI mentors as well, and having a combination which can help a lot with scaling and various things. Obviously, mentoring can have such an impact in so many areas of people's lives. How is it looking like AI is doing with all of this? Are all of us human mentors going to be out of a job anytime soon?
I don't have any answer on if AI is a good mentor. The experiments are still being designed. My personal hypothesis is that AI can be a good mentor because it's very scalable, it's personalized, it helps with a lot of problems of equity in helping people. But we have to be very careful when we are thinking about using AI in different contexts because AI models can be as good as the data that we feed into them. And a lot of data that we have are just for a specific culture. And we have to be very careful when we use an AI that's been designed with Silicon Valley data and use it in Middle East or Africa when the norms and culture are completely different. And we know to some extent the mechanisms of these AI models, but what we need is to better understand the quality of their advice. Right now, AI for everyone, from our participants to everyone in Silicon Valley, is becoming like a co-founder. And you can assign things like coding, but it doesn't give any critical feedback. So it's not challenging the entrepreneur. So what's missing from these AI models, at least from the models that we currently have access to, is the creativity that happens when you're talking with a human person. I personally think that human mentors will still be relevant because a lot of things that they can provide that AI model cannot provide, like networks, like human touch, which is very important.
It feels like AI will augment what we're doing, but not replace. So AI isn't coming for our jobs. Like a lot of people fear that it might be, but the people who know how to use it will be coming for our jobs. Will be working hand in hand with the AI and making each other better.
I think it's kind of like AI just make the reach and the effectiveness of every human mentor just like multiplied multiple times. So we can reach more people, we can help more people, but we still need the human part.
So that segues then as we're talking about the future here of what your future is going to be.
Post-graduation, I feel like what I really love doing is going back to the original passion of education and combining that with these new AI tools. What I'm currently thinking about is what is the future of education? Because traditionally thinking, when I was in school, it was just me and probably like 20, 30 other students, and it was a teacher who were giving us instruction to follow. And that was good for that time because, first of all, we couldn't have one-on-one specialized teaching for every student. That was not scalable. And the world out there needed human adults that can do jobs and follow instruction. But right now that we have these AI models that are absolutely great in following instructions, what do we need? What are the important things that we need to teach students in a sense of what skill is going to be relevant in 10, 20 years? And what are the core skills that we hope that they graduate with? And are we still going to stick to the one classroom with 30 students and one teacher, or are we going to more creative ways of teaching and instructing?
Zahra, it sounds like you've got such a bright and fascinating future ahead of you. I'm curious to keep up to date with everything that you're discovering as you go into all of that future work and research. So I'm going to move into the final 3 questions that I ask everybody. And the first one is, what is your advice for someone coming into the PhD program?
The time that they have on campus, whatever it's a 4-year college, 2-year master's or PhD, it may seem long and they may have a lot of things with courses and pieces and a lot of that. But I think one thing that's very unique about being in this place is the opportunity to connect with people and creating communities. I think if I had more time or if I go back and wanted to do this again, one thing I try to kind of like even do more would be connect with more people, join different groups. I think creating that community. I cannot put enough emphasis on this and how important it is.
Community, that's what people always end up saying, is everything's just always about the people.
Yes.
And so speaking of all about the people, then what is your life maxim and your signature phrase that all of the people around you will have heard you say a million times and continue to say?
I think I have two of them. One of them is, when there is a will, there is a way, which I heard it from my dad. I really believe in that. When there is a will, there's a way. And to some extent, I lived that when we wanted to do the refugee project. We really wanted to do that. So we figured out something and ended up doing it. That's one. And the second one that I really like, and I try to live that, is never let the fear of failure stop you from trying. So I think these are the two that I really like the most, and I try to think about when I make decisions.
And so then final question is 2 books in another media. So 2 books that you would recommend for everybody. One of them related somehow to MS&E, the other one complete open choice just for fun. And then a favorite, something else, again, free choice with what other type of media that would be.
Okay, so the MS&E book, I would go with The Visible Hand, The Managerial Revolution in American Business by Alfred Chandler. Kind of a history book explaining how the managerial revolution happened and the roles that we see as very normal. It talks about like how they came about and how we get to the point that these titles and these org designs and charts are very normal for every company. 2 other books. One that I really like is Mindstorms by Seymour Papert. Papert has been one of the people who really think about education for children and revolutionizing the way that children should learn. That book is also about how we should think about kids' learning and use of technology in kids' education. And the third book that I would say would be Lifelong Kindergarten by Mitchell Resnick. That's talking about building creativity and cultivating creativity through projects and play and gaming for children. And these 2 last books are very relevant to the projects I'm currently working on, and I really love them, so I really recommend them. The other media that I would recommend, I think this is very much out there, and everyone might have already seen that, but I would highly recommend Hamilton musical, as some of the songs from Hamilton has been my go-to song when I'm writing or when I'm working on something. So that kind of resonate with when there is a will, there is a way, whole thing. These are like my recommendations.
Yeah, there's definitely some high energy music in there that can get you pumped up and ready to get going, everything your best shot and not lose your shot.
Yeah, I'm not trying to buy my shot.
Well, Zahra, thank you so much. This has been really fun. The impact that your research can have for just millions of people out there is so exciting to think about.
Thank you for the opportunity. And it was a pleasure sharing about my research.
Thank you for listening to this episode of MS&E Stories and Voices, Graduating Student Profiles. This episode was produced and edited by me, Lindsay Aiken, with editing support and post-production from Jim Fabry. Our music was composed and performed by Catherine Barron, MS&E Masters Class of 2023. Please be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify or whichever platform you're listening on, and check out our website at msne.stanford.edu. That's msande.stanford.edu. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.